Hello and welcome to this webinar series, Harnessing NISAR, Next Generation Radar Observations for Earth Applications. I'm Erica Potus, the scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and also an instructor with the ARSET program. Today's session will be an overview of NISAR data access and tools, which will be delivered by invited experts, Dr. Franz Meyer from the Alaska Satellite Facility and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, by Heidi Christensen from the Alaska Satellite Facility, and by Anupama Sharma from the National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO. This is the training outline. Today is the second session of this three-part webinar series. The third and last session will be next Thursday at the same time, and that's going to be focused on monitoring earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides with NISAR's INSAR capability. As a reminder, there is one homework associated with this training. It will open next week on the last day of the training on July 16th, and the homework is due on August 6th. You will be able to access the homework through the training webpage. There will be a certificate of completion awarded to all of those participants who attend all of the live sessions and complete the homework assignment by the due date. Next, I'll provide an overview of today's session. So these are the objectives for today's session. By the end of the session, participants will be able to identify where to access NISAR data, whether through the Boonity platform, ISRO's Boonity platform, or the Alaska Satellite Facilities platform. Participants will be able to recognize the data format and tools for reading the data and apply tools for visualizing and analyzing NISAR data. How to ask questions. To ensure we see your question, please write your question in the Q&A box, which you can locate it by doing a click on the three dots in the bottom right of your of the window in the platform. And there you'll see a Slido, a Q&A option, and you can also see a standalone Slido tab or app. Write your questions or all your questions there, and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. And we will try to answer all the questions during the Q&A session. The remaining questions will be answered in the Q&A document, which we will post on the training website about a week after the training. Today's guest instructors are Dr. Franz Meyer, who's a professor of remote sensing at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and chief scientist at the Alaska Satellite Facility. Heidi Christensen, who's a senior GIS specialist at the Alaska Satellite Facility, and Anupama Sharma, who's group lead with the Data Dissemination and Workflow Automation Group at the National Remote Sensing Center at ISRO. So we'll start out with Dr. Franz Meyer, and welcome to all three of our guest instructors. It's a real privilege to have them be presenting here today. Welcome, Dr. Meyer, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Erica, for the introduction. Yes, so NISAR data will be available in various places. One of the main ones is the Alaska Satellite Facility and its discovery services that Heidi is going to present to you later on in this session. So ASF is an organization at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and our main goal is to make remote sensing data accessible, including those from NISAR, but including also other data sets that we hold in the archive. ASF is a remote sensing center specializing in synthetic aperture radar data sets, and we operate the NASA Data Center for SAR data, which is hosting data back to 1978 and is also hosting and managing NISAR's L-band data sets, those that are being processed by JPL on a global scale. In addition to just hosting the data and making them discoverable, we also provide a bunch of tools and services and additional resources, training materials, and so on that help you working with SAR datasets, understand the content of the data, how to access the data, and how to do various applications with the datasets. All data that you discover through ASF, NISAR, of course, but also the other datasets we host are freely and openly accessible for you and for download and for doing your research work. So let's talk briefly about NISAR data availability and accessibility. So currently, NISAR data, there is a set of pre-calibration datasets available through ASF. It's a little bit more than 100,000 products that were acquired prior to February 2026. The coverage map that you see on this slide shows you where all of these datasets are located. These are really there to get you used to the dataset, to get you used to how you read these datasets, what layers are contained, what types of products will become available. Information about these pre-calibration products, including some known issues with this particular set of products, can be found on the following the link that's on this slide. Very, very soon, in July of 2026, we expect the global release of forward processed NISAR datasets to become available. So this is when really starting from July 2026, all the observations going forward will be accessible on a global scale through ASF, all the L-band NISAR datasets. If you have questions about data releases and products that are available through ASF, you can follow this link here that says NISAR Data User Guide, available NISAR datasets. So this link will get you to a page where latest release information is being tracked. So NISAR, in contrast to many other traditional SAR missions, is providing a larger suite of data products. So of course, we will provide the traditional level 1 SAR data products that you are used to if you have used SAR data before. This includes RSLCs. These are radar-coded single complex images. So these are data sets that contain both the full amplitude information, sort of the image information, but also the underlying phase content, which you would need if you wanted to do NISAR INSAR type applications. The RSLC data are available on a global scale. Additionally, in selected regions, particularly the cryospheric regions, so the large ice caps and the large glaciers, there's also a radar-coded interferogram available, the RIFG product. It's a range Doppler wrapped interferogram and also a range Doppler unwrapped interferogram. So if you're familiar with interferometry, these products might be useful for you to do some displacement analysis in these cryospheric regions. Lastly, there's an offset product available. So these are pairwise pixel offsets calculated between pairs of images. These offsets also are useful to track motion in the cryospheric region. So these are, level 1 data sets. Those are more familiar to folks that have used SAR before, but NISAR will create additional products and make available additional products, so-called level 2 products. These are still radar observables, so amplitude and phase information and polarimetric information, but they are available now in a geocoded form, so in a ground coordinate system. And so the products are listed here. On a global scale, we have the GCOV product, the geocoded covariance product. This is just a complicated word for saying these are the normalized radar backscatter layers for each polarization. So you have, for most land areas, you have a horizontally polarized, fully calibrated image available there, and also a cross-polarized, fully calibrated amplitude image that you can use for mapping, or if you have sequences of them, as we'll show you later, you can use them to look at changes in the environment. The GSLC product is a geocoded single-look complex product that's also globally available. Again, this is very useful for folks that want to get into interferometry. It gets you very rapid and easy access to interferogram generation. To create an interferogram, you simply will have to cross-multiply two repeated images, two repeated GSLC images. Then there's a G unwrap or gun W products that we often call it. It's a geocoded unwrapped interferogram. So this is one that's ready to go for your analysis of geophysical displacements. It captures displacements of the Earth's surface that occurred between two subsequent images, so within a 12-day time period. Associated with that are also coherence layers. They are really useful for coherent change detection to identify damage or to identify deforestation or any kind of other change feature that you're interested in. And lastly, again, over the cryospheric regions, there's another offset product, a geocoded offset product, similar to the level 1 product that I talked about earlier. But this one's really good to give you offset estimates in a UTM or polar stereo projection. The image on the right-hand side shows you one of these unwrapped interferogram products of a co-eruptive interferogram for an earthquake in Ethiopia, showing you the kind of phase quality and displacement quality NISAR will be able to give you. Lastly, in terms of data products, there's a level 3 data product that's also being made available. So this is a science product. It's called the SME2 or the soil moisture retrieval product. So this provides you soil moisture information at a 200-meter pixel spacing derived using 3 independent algorithms. So there are 3 algorithms that are listed here that are used to derive soil moisture. So you get 3 different layers. And these algorithms that differ, they have different dependencies on time series. So some use more time series information, some less. Some use more ancillary data, some less. Some do more regularization, some less. So you get 3 solutions that you can compare and analyze for your soil moisture applications. There are also additional layers included in this data set. You have the 200-meter aggregated radar brightness information for all polarizations and additional reference information like incidence angle maps and statistics information. The soil moisture product has an accuracy goal of 0.06 cubic meters over unflagged areas, allowing for areas that have a vegetation water content below 5 kilograms per square meter. So there's a lot of calibration and validation that was done for this product. There were pre-launch calibrations where ALOS-2 images were used to simulate NISAR data sets and do the validation. And in post-launch, there's sparse soil moisture networks that are being used for calibration, as well as there are supersites that are being used to ensure that the product meets requirements and user expectations. So these are all the data sets that are available through ASF, the Alaska Satellite Facility, on the NASA side, but there is additional data available through the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. Remember that NISAR is a 2-frequency mission. It carries an L-band radar, but also an S-band radar, and all NISAR S-band data will be distributed through ISRO, through the discovery portals that ISRO provides. In addition to that, ISRO will also distribute some L-band data. These are data collected concurrently with S-band acquisitions over areas of interest to ISRO. And so the ISRO distributed L-band data might have slight differences compared to the ones available through the NASA interfaces. They are independently processed and may have some value differences compared to the ones that you get from NASA. The locations where S-band data are available are shown in these maps. So you see some areas in the Antarctic, of course, lots of areas in India and around India, but also certain selected areas throughout the rest of the world. To discover the S-band data hosted by ISRO, ISRO has a very nice discovery platform that's called Bunidi. The link on this page, the one behind NISAR information page, gets you to the Bunidi page, specifically the one that's designed for NISAR. It gives you some background information about the mission. And if you scroll down, there's then information about how to access and discover NISAR datasets. You will hear more in this session about ISRO's capability from a presenter from ISRO itself. And with that, I am handing it off next to Heidi for the next section of the training.
Thanks, Franz. There are a number of tools available that allow you to find and access NISAR data. Vertex is ASF's data search portal. It's a map-based interface that you open in your web browser, and it allows you to explore and access all of ASF's SAR holdings. This interface is really optimized for looking for SAR data. There are customized filters that allow you to search for things like polarization, orbit direction, product types, or acquisition modes. And each data set that you can search for in Vertex has a custom suite of filters. Vertex allows you to view all of the available products for emission in the same search results. And in the background, what's finding these data sets is actually the ASF Search Python package. If you're interested in interacting with the data programmatically, you can use ASF Search to build a script that will find and access any of ASF's data holdings. So let's take a look at Vertex. When you open Vertex, by default, it will be a geographic search for Sentinel-1 data. We can search for NISAR data by clicking the drop-down menu and selecting NISAR. You can see that there are more than 100,000 files available, so it's important to apply search filters. One of the easiest ways to restrict your search is to draw an area of interest. So by default, I can just draw a rectangle, but I can also place a point, a line, a polygon, draw a circle, or even upload a geospatial file. This brings my search down to 181 files, and I can also apply some additional filters, including a date range, and I can search for a particular product type. If I don't select anything in this menu, it will return all of the different products in my search, but I can restrict it to a single product, or if I have several products that I want to include, I can select all of the desired products. I'll just search for the GCOV products. Now, going back to the area of interest, you can see that the area of interest that I drew is indicated here, but I have this option to import a geospatial file. I can use a shapefile, GeoJSON, or KML if I want to use that to set my area of interest. If I scroll down, you can see that there are a number of additional filters, and as you become more familiar with the data set, you may want to use some of these filters to further restrict your search. If you're unsure of what the filter is used for, you can click the documentation link. So for example, the scene name patterns, this documentation link tells you about the ability to use a wildcard query to search for any portion of a NISAR file name. So I'll launch my search, and I have 33 results. If I click on an item in my results, you can see that it displays the footprint for that item in red on the map. I can also click on the map to select a footprint, and it will highlight a product with that footprint in my results. If I find a product that covers my area of interest particularly well, I can use the More Like This button to restrict my search to just items that have that same footprint. Essentially, what this is doing is adding a track and frame filter to my search, and that uses the track and frame from that granule that I selected. So now I have a list of 7 files that all have that same footprint. If I click on one of these files, you can see a long list of associated files that I can download. For most people, the HDF5 file for that product is what you're interested in. And I can either just click on this download file icon to launch the download directly in my browser, or I can choose to add the file to my download queue. If I want to explore the images a little bit more before selecting which ones to download, I can choose this option to open the image viewer. And I can actually zoom in to browse images and examine my area of interest a little bit more closely. That zoom extent is kept as I go through the different products. And if I find a product that I like, I can also launch a download directly from this interface. So I can either download it through my browser or add it to my queue. You can see that I now have 2 items in my download queue. If I decide that I actually want all 7 of these and I want to do a time series analysis, I can use this queue button at the top of the list and either download all associated files or just select the file types that I want. So I can select all 7 GCOV HDF5 files and add that to my downloads queue. Now you'll see that I have 7 items. It recognized that the 2 that I'd added already were already in the list and did not duplicate them. So I now have 7 items ready to download. I could just go through and click each one of these download icons, or I could leverage the option to download a Python script. If I download a Python script, it saves that to my computer and I can simply launch that to download each one of the items automatically in order. I can also use this option to copy the URLs. So if you have a script that you already use to access data based on their URL, you can copy that list. Or if you want to use direct S3 access, these products are stored in AWS S3. And so I can copy a list of the S3 URLs as well. As I mentioned, in the background, ASF Search is doing the work to find these products. And there is the option for any search that you do, you can export a snippet, a Python snippet that shows you what was done to find these data sets. And so if you're interested in getting started with the Python package, this is a great way to start as it shows you the particular syntax that would be needed to find those data sets. So that's Vertex. Let's take a look at Earth Data Search. Earth Data Search is similar to Vertex in that it's a map-based interface that you run in your web browser, but rather than just having access to SAR datasets, you can search for any dataset in the Earth data system. Many of you may already be using Earth Data Search to find data, and you can now search for NISAR in that same location. Earth Data Search provides built-in support for Harmony data transformation tools, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And similar to ASF Search, the Earth Access Python package allows you to find and access data from any of the Earth data collections. So let's launch Earth Data Search. The landing page is simply a search bar. I can type in NISAR, and you can see that there are 49 collections that match my search. Not all of these are actually collected by the NISAR mission itself, so you may want to use this platforms filter to restrict the search to just NISAR. So I'll select space-based platforms, Earth observation satellites, and then NISAR. There are still quite a few collections, and so if you're just exploring the data set and you're not exactly sure what you're looking for, the processing levels may be helpful. Now, these descriptions are more specific to optical imagery, so they don't always translate to SAR, but level 0 is still raw data for NISAR. The level 1 data are any data sets that are still in the range Doppler coordinate system or the radar geometry. Level 2 data has been geocoded to a map projection, and then level 3 data are higher level products generated from those level 2 products. The only NISAR level 3 data available are soil moisture products. Now, the 1A designation is used for any of the ancillary data sets for NISAR. So this is mostly for users who are doing some advanced processing and want access to data sets such as the orbit ephemeris files. So I'll restrict my search to just level 2 data, which are the geocoded products. And you can see that there are a number of options. I can apply, again, a spatial restriction. So I'll draw an area of interest on the map. I can also set a date range. To see the actual products, I need to select a collection. So I'll look for the data. And if I click on an item in the results, it shows me the footprint. Or again, I can click on a footprint on the map to highlight one of those products in the search results. If I find a product that I'm interested in, I can click on the download icon, and this gives me a link to download the download URL. I also have the option to copy the S3 access path, or I can add this item to a project. So this is similar to the download queue in Vertex. So I'll add a couple of items to my project and then open it up. You can see that this is redirecting me to my Earth Data, to use my Earth Data login credentials. And Earth Data login credentials are required when downloading data from Earth Data. And this same login applies to any data set across the Earth observation platform. So you just need one set of credentials to download anything from Earth Data. If you are logging in and you don't already have Earth Data login credentials, there will be a link where you can register. It's free and it's very fast, and then that gets you access to all of NASA's Earth observation data. The same thing applies in Vertex. Here I have some options for downloading. I can either just download all of the HDF5 files, or I can choose to customize the data sets. Now, Harmony is Earth Data's data transformation tool. It allows you to extract or pull out data in the format that you want to use it in your application. So for the NISAR GCOV products, the net-to-cog service is available, and this allows you to extract individual data sets from the HDF5 file and output them as cloud-optimized geotiffs. So if I select that option, I can click the Edit Variables button, and you'll see that there's a data structure inside of the HDF5 file. I'll go into this more later, but there are a number of different data sets all packaged together, including from different frequencies. Now, I can select individual products that I'm interested in, and rather than downloading the entire HDF5 file, it will extract each one of these layers as a cloud optimized geotiff and provide me a download link just for those products. So if I click the download data, instead of having a list of links ready, it shows me a status page where in the background, Harmony is extracting these layers and preparing download links for me to use. So I can come back later and there'll be something that looks like this, which is a list then of all of the different individual layers that have been extracted. The Harmony interface in Earth Data Search is currently being overhauled, so things may actually look a little bit different later this summer. The functionality will remain the same, but don't be surprised if the menu looks a little bit different. We will provide update guidance for how to use the new interface in our NISAR Data User Guide, which is a resource that I'll talk a little bit more about later on. So that's Earth Data Search. Now, as Franz mentioned, NASA serves the L-band data from the NISAR mission, and the Indian Space Research Organization serves the S-band data. I'm going to pass it over to Usha to introduce you to ISRO's data discovery platform.
Hello everyone, I'm Anupama Sharma from National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO, and today I'll be talking on Bhunidhi, which is ISRO's EOData hub, and also on the access mechanism of NISAR, SR and ISRO interested LSAR data from Bhunidhi. My presentation will majorly cover the introduction to Bhunidhi, the NISAR information site, the data access mechanisms and tools available at Bhunidhi for analyzing the NISAR data. Bhunidhi is ISRO's EOData hub and it hosts an extensive IRS and non-IRS catalog for the data which we have acquired since 1988 and daily acquisitions which we do at our ground station covering India and surrounding regions are also added to the catalog of Bhunidhi. We also facilitate the regional distribution of Sentinel data and also the data of Landsat 8 and 9 which we acquire over our ground station. Bunidhi provides a single window interface for both open and commercial data access with a near real-time visualization tool. And the data dissemination at Bunidhi is guided by the Indian Space Policy 2023. And as per that, even the NISAR SR data and the LSAR data of ISRO interest will be available as an open data access at Bunidhi. Like I said, Bunidhi has a vast archive of data. To begin with, the ResourceSat series ranging from 5 meter to 56 meter sensor, list 3 AWIPS and list 4, wherein we also have global coverage. Then the SAR satellite, which is RESAT 1A, and the acquisitions on the left side show the medium resolution ScanSAR sensors acquisition, wherein it shows the global archives as well. Then, as I said, we are the regional distributors of Sentinel 1A and 1B. That this is how the archive is at Bunidhi. Then the Landsat 9 acquisitions, the NOAASAR data which we have at our archives. Moving on to the OceanSat series satellite, which has the local area and global area coverage. And in the global area coverage, the entire globe is covered in 2 days. Even that data is available at Bunidhi for access. To the same archive, we will be adding the NISAR data as well. The image shows the GCOF product of NISAR SR, which we took for a smaller data range, just to give a feel of how the SR data spread is available at Bunidhi. We have also launched the NISAR information website, wherein we have made every information available on the NISAR specification, the observation plan for SR data, the data products, formats, the access mechanisms, and the science and application, and the associated resources. So from the NISAR page itself, since we have also provided the data access mechanism details at the site, you can move on to the data download Bunidhi page directly from the information page itself. These are the products which will be available at Bunidhi. So starting from the level 0 product, which are the raw science products, to level 1, which are the products in radar coordinates, and the level 2 products in geographic coordinates. Eventually, we will be also adding the level 3 and level 4 products, which are the large area mosaic, and the science products. These products are available in the H5 format. This slide shows the type of products of NISAR, both for S and LSAR, and the volumes of those corresponding product, wherein you can see the volume ranges from 0.5 GB and it goes up to 54 GB for the SR data products. Coming on to the NISAR data access mechanisms, the data will be available as an open data. And the two major access mechanisms are the browse and order, wherein we have provided a web interface where the data can be searched and then adding on to the cart with using an interactive map interface, the data can be then downloaded. For programmatic access of NISAR data, the APIs are also available. We have enabled the spatio-temporal asset catalog, which makes our catalog interoperable, and writing a Python program, the data can be daily taken from the catalog at Bunidhi. We have the data visualization tool as well, and in the near future, we plan to release the Vista tool, which will be augmented for NISAR data. And based on the augmentation of resources which we do at Bunidhi, we will be planning to release the Code Lab as well as the GeoRaster platform, which are for online coding as well as for readily available tools at Bunidhi for NISAR data processing. So to begin with, the direct download access of NISAR data, this is for the users who would wish to browse and download the data sets through a map-based interactive web application. We have provided various search options to target the area of interest. Various advanced filters specific to NISAR data ordering are also provided, like track frame, polarization, radar config, and node. The data sets can be searched using these filters. They can be then downloaded after adding to the cart. So login is mandatory. That means you have to register at Bhoonidhi, and once you get the user ID, you can access the data. So if we go to the steps which are to be followed in order to get the direct access of the data, after the registration is done and the login credentials are available, on login, you have to then get the target area of interest by specifying the AOIs, the period of interest, and using various filters, the common as well as the NISAR specific filters. So the video on the right side is actually depicting a small session of how the data can be downloaded from Bhoonidhi. It shows various filters which are available, and selection of those filters can be done, and then based on the filters selected, the satellite and sensor and product combinations are to be taken. We have added all the NISAR satellite product combinations at the filters. And once the product is selected, you can also go for advanced filters, which are specific for NISAR data. Like I said, the polarization, the radar config, node. And once the satellite specific filters are selected, on click of submit button, Bhoonidhi fetches all the data products which are available at the archive for those filters. Besides every scene which we fetch, this is the subsample view of the product. So beside the every scene which we fetch, there are some tools using which the data can be either published onto the map, the metadata can be seen, and the same metadata can be downloaded as well. The video is showing the same. And once the product is added to the cart, the cart option is to be selected, and you can see the product which was added to the cart. So suppose if the product is available at our live archive, over the scene, we make a green window, which is an information to the user that the product is available. You can directly download. If there is a red window above it, then that means that is a delayed download. We will be bringing it from our cold archive. So this is how the product gets downloaded. Now, if the data is to be programmatically accessed, then we have made available the Bhoonidhi APIs through a REST-based API. We have also enabled a specification page at Bhoonidhi, which gives every detail about the APIs, right from authentication to data search to data download. Because it is available as a spatiotemporal asset catalog, we have even given small programs which can be then seen, and a Python program can be then written to directly download the data using the program. The right side shows the NISAR data collections, which will be enabled for the NISAR data. Very soon in near future, we plan to release first the visualization of NISAR data, and then the CodeLab platform, using which is a Jupyter Hub interface, using which online coding can be done on the Bhoonidhi platform. Now, in order to analyze these products, we have added few tools at Bhoonidhi. To begin with is the HDF to TIFF conversion tool, which converts this NISAR datasets in H5 format into GeoTIFF. And it also supports the spatial subsetting, which enables the users to extract only a smaller area of interest by providing either a point or a location or a polygon as a shapefile. Then the next tool is the SARPOL tool, which is available as an integrated package with QGIS, and it has a comprehensive suite of utilities for SAR data processing and analyzing by providing advanced hybrid polarimetric decomposition techniques. So it facilitates tools for leveraging the rich information content of NISAR datasets and enables SAR-based application within an open source GIS environment. Very soon, we are planning to release our NISAR reference observation plan visualization tool, which will actually help the user to know how, when, and where the NISAR data is actually planned and to be acquired. And then subsequently, when it comes to our archive, we will try to bring the footprints of that data also on the tool. So by using filters such as observation cycle or a time range or a radar configuration ID or the node, the users can see how the observations are being planned. And over that, even the track and frame footprints can be put, and users will know exactly how at a given time which observation was planned. We have released a limited set of NISAR S-band datasets at Bunidi. The information about the release detail is available at the URL, which is put on the slide at the bottom right. In the first release, we have put RSLC, GSLC, and GCOF products, which are not only covering the Indian landmass, but we have also selected few global locations. This release is for the users to understand the data structures, the product format, and the characteristics of NISAR SR observations. This brings me to the end of my presentation. But before that, we have a resource page at Bunidi, wherein we have added very many frequently asked questions. In order to access the data from Bunidi, there are various help videos, which you can check and check the procedure through which the data can be accessed. The NISAR satellite can also be tracked through our Bunidi Upagraha tool. And in case of any queries or any feedback you have on Bunidi application, please write to us at bunidi@nrse.gov.in, or you can also connect with us at our forum application, the URL for which is also available in the slide. Thank you.
Now that we've introduced you to some of the platforms that are available for finding and accessing the data, let's talk a little bit about using the data. Some things to be aware of about the NISAR data format is that it's in HDF5 format. You got a bit of a preview of that with the Earth Data Search demonstration, but basically this allows the data producers to package together multiple data sets along with metadata and ancillary files all together in a single file. NISAR uses a specific flavor of HDF5 in that the coordinate system is encoded using CF conventions. This is more common for NetCDF files, and so you may need to use NetCDF drivers to read the data rather than the current HDF5 drivers. Otherwise, it can't access the geospatial data. NISAR HDF5 files are cloud optimized, so you can access them in small chunks, which allows users to stream the data into memory rather than downloading the entire file. So if you want to access just specific parts of the data from the file rather than downloading the whole thing, both ASF Search and Earth Access have workflows for doing that. And I've linked to some documentation that walks you through how you can stream the data rather than downloading it. NISAR has a large spatial footprint. The data is acquired in a very wide swath of about 240 kilometers. So the footprint of the individual files is quite large. And then with having many data sets packaged together in a single file, it does result in some very large file sizes. So it varies depending on the type of file and the acquisition mode. But for example, many of the GCOV products over land tend to be on the order of about 7 gigabytes each. If you're looking at single look complex data sets, those are often close to 30 gigabytes each. So it is important to be aware of the options available for subsetting or just pulling out what you want from the data set, especially if you're limited by download bandwidth. There are a number of different projections used for the level 2 data sets. These diagrams show the range of projections. So between 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south, the data is projected into the UTM zone for the location of the data set. So if your area of interest crosses multiple UTM zones, you may want to reproject some of your data so that it's all the same. And similarly, if you're working in above 60 degrees north, that area uses a North Polar Stereographic Coordinate System, which may be less familiar. And so if you add your data set to a GIS software or take a look at it, it may be oriented differently than what you expect. So you might also consider reprojecting your data if you're working in those areas. Similarly, everything south of 60 degrees, so all of Antarctica is projected into a South Polar Stereographic system. There are a range of software platforms available that support NISAR, working with NISAR data. We'll cover just a handful of those today. For GIS software, ArcGIS Pro has supported the NISAR HDF5 data format since version 3.4, which was released back in November 2024. The most recent release, which is version 3.7, was just released this past May, provides additional support specifically for the NISAR GCOV products. So I'll be doing a demonstration of how to work with those products in the newest version. Users can also leverage QGIS to work with NISAR data, but there are some workarounds currently required in order to view the data in QGIS. Basically, you have to treat it like a netCDF file. JPL is developing a GDAL driver for the NISAR HDF5 format, but it's not yet available in the main GDAL distribution, so it's not accessible to the GDAL installation that comes with QGIS. So I'll be demonstrating some of the GIS workflows in both Pro and QGIS. And then we'll also talk about some of the open source software packages that are available for working with the data programmatically. So ICE3 is the software package developed by JPL specifically for the NISAR mission. And then Plant ICE3 is kind of a wrapper software package for ICE3 that makes it easier to use some of the ICE3 functions. And then GMT-SAR is a commonly used SAR processing package, which now supports NISAR products. And OpenSEPO is a collection of open source tools developed by Earth Big Data that allows you to work with NISAR data, specifically for subsetting and transforming the data. So Franz will be going through a programmatic workflow after we've looked at GIS workflows. So for working with NISAR data in ArcGIS Pro, we do have some tutorials that are available. So if you're working with earlier versions than 3.7, you can check out our NISAR and GIS story map, which goes over how to work with NISAR and ArcGIS versions 3.4 and newer. And it also links to content for older versions as well. And it covers many of the different products in the NISAR data suite. So if you're interested in working with any of those products, or if you're using a slightly older version of ArcGIS Pro, I encourage you to check out that tutorial. And we also have a newly published tutorial that's focused on working with the GCOV products in ArcGIS Pro 3.7. So let's switch over to ArcGIS Pro. Since ArcGIS 3.4, we've been able to treat NISAR data as a multidimensional raster. I can simply click the Add Data button, and from the drop-down menu, select Multidimensional Data, navigate to my NISAR data file, and select it to see the data sets that it contains. Now, within the HDF5 file, there are a number of different data sets, including 2 different frequencies. Most of the GCOV products have both frequency A and frequency B, and these are collected at slightly different frequencies. And in general, the frequency A is the data set that most people will want to use for analysis because it is a pixel spacing of usually 10 or 20 meters, depending on the acquisition mode, whereas frequency B is generally at an 80 meter pixel spacing. So I'll add the 2 frequency B. You can see that there's a layer, a covariance layer for each one of the polarizations that are available. So I'll select those 2 and add them as multidimensional rasters. They're each added as their own layer, and they display radiometrically terrain-corrected backscatter values in gamma naught power. Star backscatter values are generally very close to 0, especially in the power scale. But if you have a few very bright pixels, it can really skew the dynamic range of your image. And because the NISAR footprints are so large, the chances of having some of those bright pixels is quite high. So often we'll have to adjust the symbology. So I'll take a look at my copolarized covariance product and change the symbology. So I'll just set a custom minimum and maximum, 0 and 0.3. And now we can see some features on the surface. So if I zoom in, I can see that surface water tends to be a dark blue, and then we can see agricultural fields and urban areas in varying brightnesses of the SAR backscatter. So this is the traditional way of working with the data as a multidimensional data set. But there is now another option when you're using ArcGIS Pro 3.7. If I navigate to a GCOV product, and this is specific to the GCOV products only. If I navigate to a GCOV product and expand it, I can see that there's an entry for each of the frequencies. So we have that frequency A and frequency B. If I just grab one of those and drag it into the map, I'm going to cancel the pyramids. It takes a while for these large data sets. And it does take a while to render the frequency A data. So it is added as, it's a 2-band raster that has 1 band for each polarization. If it's a quad pol data set, then it would have 4 bands included. But it renders it as an RGB image, and by default, the HH is assigned to the red and the HV to the green and blue. So we can change that symbology. I'll switch this so that both the red and the blue show the HH. And again, I'll set some custom ranges so that it's more in line with the values that we expect to see. So I'll use 0.3 for both of the copol bands and then 0.5 for the cross-pol band. So now we can see a color decomposition where the surface water is very dark. Urban areas tend to be quite bright, and then we can see kind of the patchwork of agricultural regions in a mosaic of varying colors and intensities. So this is one way to interact with the GCOV dataset by integrating both polarizations into a single representation. But we can also work with these datasets one polarization at a time. So if I select one of these layers that I've added by the new drag and drop GCOV method, you can see in the menu there's this SAR tab that's available to me. If I select one of these layers that I added as a multidimensional raster, that's not available. There are some multidimensional tools that I can access, but by selecting it, by adding it as a SAR product, we then get access to this SAR menu. So there's an option to visualize or just pull out one band of the raster to visualize. So I'll look at the HH, and by default, this shows a color bar that kind of goes from a rusty red to a yellow. Again, I could adjust the symbology to see the features better. I can also choose to look at the HV instead. Some processing tools are fine with a 2-band raster or multi-band raster, but for some analysis workflows, you may want to have each polarization available as a standalone raster. And so to do that, we can leverage the existing imagery and SAR-specific tools, either the geoprocessing tools or the raster functions that are available in ArcGIS Pro. And so we'll open the raster functions pane and search for extract to pull out just one of the 2 bands from that 2-band raster. So under the extract bands, I'll select my 2-band raster, and I'll select the HH polarization. I can create a new layer, and this just then shows me the HH from the frequency A. And again, I could adjust the symbology. But at this point, I can select right-click and select the data option to export the raster to a standalone format. So I can output it as a GeoTIFF, for example, and then it's available for me to use just on its own. So I'll output this as the frequency HH GeoTIFF. I have the option to clip my output to a specific geometry. I can either select an existing layer, or I could add a shapefile and use that extent, or I can just use the current display extent. So I'll just clip out this part here. And under the settings, I prefer, for SAR data, I prefer nearest neighbor resampling rather than bilinear. And I'll export that raster data set. So now I have a standalone GeoTIFF that I can use in other projects as well. And if I zoom out and compare it to the full footprint, I've extracted just a small part of that. And again, I can adjust the symbology so that I can better see the features. And then I can use any of the analysis tools or geoprocessing tools or raster functions that I want to apply to that image. So that was ArcGIS Pro. Let's take a look at QGIS. We do have some resources for working with QGIS as well. There's a really nice demonstration video that will go through some of the content that I'll be covering in my demo as well. That was recorded after the last NISAR town hall meeting. And then we also have some step-by-step documentation for working with NISAR data in QGIS that covers quite a range of the different product types and different things you might want to do with them. So let's launch QGIS. If I navigate to a NISAR data set, I've got this GCUV data set, you can see that it recognizes the data. It can see that there are many layers included in that HDF5 file. And it's very tempting to just want to drag and drop these right into my project. Unfortunately, QGIS does not recognize the geospatial coordinate system. And so we can't do that. It can't place it on the map. So in order to work with the data, we have to treat it like a netcdf file. One way to do that is simply rename the file so that instead of the .h5 extension, you have .nc. But another way is to simply define the netcdf driver when adding the layer. So if we go to the layer menu, add layer, add a raster layer, I'll navigate to my NISAR file. And then I'll go to the very front of the path and just type in netcdf and a colon. And now if I click the add button, it shows me all of those data sets that are possible to add. So again, we've got the frequency A and the frequency B with one layer for each polarization. I'm going to select the frequency B just so that things render a little bit more quickly. And I'll add those layers to my project. So now there is a layer for each one of those polarizations. You can see that I've got HH and HV. Again, the symbology needs adjustment, so we can open the symbology pane. And again, we can just set our minimum and maximum to a custom number. Now there's a glitch in QGIS that sometimes doesn't allow you to type in decimals, but you can just copy and paste from a text file and then it works. So that's a quick workaround if you wanted to use decimals for your maximum. All right, so we have this image of the SAR backscatter, and we can work with it using whatever tools are available for dealing with HDF5 data sets. Or we may want to export this to be a standalone raster. And that can be done by opening the processing toolbox. And I'll search for clip. And we can clip the raster by extent. So I'll select my HH layer. And then again, there are some options. You can calculate it, the extent from an existing layer. You can calculate it from a bookmark. You can even just draw an area of interest on the map. or we can just use the current map extent. So I'll choose that option. By default, it will just save it to a temporary file, but if you wanted to actually have a standalone GeoTIFF that you could use in the future as well or share with somebody else, you can actually save it to a file then. I'll tag it with a subset. All right, so now I've added my subset to the map. I'm going to change the color so that we can tell the difference between the original and the subset. And again, I will set my max to 0.3. So now you can see I've got this nice subset image of the raster. So zoom in and see that this is the all right, and so that's a way to subset the NISAR data if you wanted to work with a smaller area of interest. I'll pass it over to Franz to talk about programmatic workflows.
Thank you, Heidi, for handing it off one more time. Yes, so I want to show you a little bit more involved workflows. I'm going to give you a sneak peek to just show you how this would work if you want to dive in deeper into the data set, or if you have graduate students that you want to spend more effort into diving deep into the processing algorithms. So first, if you wanted to work with data sets and develop algorithms around the data set, NASA is committed to make this easy for you, no matter what your access patterns are. If you are a person who's interested in downloading data sets to your local machine and work with the data sets locally, we are set up to support you fully. We have very high bandwidth data download capabilities. We can distribute up to 10 petabytes per month of data sets through the ASF DAC interfaces, and we have very thick pipes to get large amounts of data to you quickly. So fear not if you like downloading data sets locally. This is perfectly fine, and we have the systems in place to support this kind of access pattern. If, however, you're interested, or you are somebody that is interested in working in the cloud or moving basically your algorithm from your local machine to the archive, there's a variety of ways of how you can get started with cloud workflows. One of them is the ASF OpenSAR Lab platform. There's a link here to the OpenSAR Lab platform. You can sign up for that platform and try to do your work, but you have also a team here at OpenSAR Lab that can give you suggestions for how to start with your cloud-based workflows. There's also, NASA has a community that's called NASA OpenScapes. This community is particularly designed to help people with getting started in the cloud and moving their workflows into the cloud. So if you follow the link to the OpenScapes platform, there's a lot of information and material available for you to get started with your lifting your workflows into the cloud. And so whether you work locally on your local compute machine or whether you work in the cloud, there is a number of workflows available that you can use that can help you get used to accessing NISAR data sets and getting an idea how to use Python and Jupyter notebooks to interact and do scientific analysis with NISAR data. You can follow this QR code or snap this QR code, or also follow the link that's on the slide here to navigate to a page that has a lot of information. So what I'm just briefly going to do with you is I'm going to go to that page to show you where you can find NISAR cookbooks and NISAR tutorials. I'm going to talk a little bit about who the target audience for these workflows is. We already talked about where to run these. You can run them locally on your Linux machine, or you can use a platform like OpenSAR Lab. I'm going to use OpenSAR Lab to demonstrate one of those workflows for you at the very end briefly. So let's dive in. I'm going to click this link. For you, if you want to follow along, you can snap that QR code. If you have the slides already, you can also click that link and follow along with me. So you're landing again at the NISAR data user guide. that was referenced a number of times already. Super useful place for you to find all things NISAR. And so here you see a section that's on NISAR tutorials. There's a set of tutorials available. There's story maps tutorials that you've already heard about. And then there are Python resources. So these are more Python-based, involved science workflows and cookbooks that help you get started with these workflows. So we'll look here quickly at the NISAR cookbooks, as it shows here, that were developed for accessing and working with NISAR data. So if you click that, you see a little bit more information. You see a link to the GitHub repository. Always important to say that all of our workflows are fully open source and openly available. So everything you find at ASF is exposed on public GitHub, and you can clone it to your local machine and work with these workflows yourself. For now, we'll go to the cookbook website. And so this website is really useful because it tells you a lot about what these cookbooks are about. So they are workflows that help you get started with like accessing GCOV and GAN-W and SLC datasets. So how do you read these datasets? How do you subset the datasets? How do you stream files? And how do you do simple workflows using Python scripting? It's important that we are accepting community contributions. So we are envisioning this as a growing sort of collection of cookbooks that include contributions from all of you over the years. The motivation is that NISAR provides an incredibly comprehensive data set, and we want to provide hands-on examples that help you understand how to work with this growing archive over time. So we'll talk a little bit real quick on how to run these cookbooks. These cookbooks are done as Jupyter notebooks. You can run them on your local machine, or you can run them on platforms like OpenSAR Lab. That's what I will do to demonstrate those cookbooks to you. To get started, you would install the software by basically cloning the code from the GitHub repository using commands that are listed here. So if you have never done interacted with GitHub before, there's information in this document that help you understand how to get started. And so in our case, I have already cloned these cookbooks on my OpenSAR Lab platform. So I'm going to switch over to OpenSAR Lab, which is a Jupyter hub in the cloud that is basically running in a web browser. It's very easy to access and doesn't need any local install. And in OpenSAR Lab, I have already cloned the NISAR cookbooks. So let me show that to you real quick on my screen. Just a second. Clicking away these boxes. So in my folder, I've cloned the NISAR cookbook. So I have a folder here that's called NISAR cookbook. If I go there, you have a bunch of files in this folder, and I have a little symbol here that's called JB. It's a so-called Jupyter book structure here that basically lets me look at all of the individual notebooks contained in this folder like they are chapters in a book. So here, if you go through this cookbook in the individual chapters, will tell you a bunch of things about what these cookbooks are about. So this is a page that you've already seen. It tells you how to install the software. It tells you how to get an Earth Data login to be able to access NISAR data, and tells you then how to actually access data sets. And then further down here in this section, GCOV, are a bunch of notebooks that let you play around with data sets, where you can test some first examples of workflows. And so I'm going to look at one of the amplitude backscatter tutorials. And so we just will load real quick a time series of NISAR images into a notebook and do a simple time series animation of these data sets. So this here, the thing that you're seeing on the screen now, is what's called a Jupyter notebook. A Jupyter notebook is basically a data recipe that's composed of individual cells that you have to look through in sequence. So there are two kinds of contents here. One of them is text-based content in so-called markdown cells. So this is instructions and graphics that you can embed here. And then interspersed with the text content are individual cells shown here in gray. These are, Python-based code cells that you can execute to run the code behind that's embedded in this particular notebook. To run these code cells, there's a little sideways triangle here, which would run this particular cell. So when I click that, it executes that particular code cell, executes the code, and does the work that this particular cell is designed to do. So I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to quickly run all these cells. Oops. And then show you what is happening by going through them real quick. So what this notebook does, it fetches a small series of NISAR GCOF products. So GCOF, again, are the calibrated amplitude products that have layers for the horizontal polarization and the cross-polarized data sets. And we are fetching a bunch of data here that are constrained by a start and an end time. So I'm looking for data between November 22nd of 2025 and January 16th of 2026. Actually 2028 in this case, but the latest scenes is in 2026. Then I create an AOI, sort of a geographic bounding box. So I'm looking here at an area that in this case is southern Nepal in the Himalaya mountains. And I'm searching then the ASF archive for areas that fit this area of interest and fit the start and end time that I defined. And I'm looking only for these GCOF products now. And so in this case, I found 5 repeated images. You see the URLs to these images. You could click those to download the files to your local machine if you wanted to. So we have 5 repeated data sets. The next cell is making sure that sometimes, currently in the archive, we may have certain products more than once, processed with different processor versions. You very likely will be interested in the one processed with the most recent processor version. So this next code grabs the newest one if they are identical products, grabs the one that was created with the most recent version of the processor. In our case, there are still 5 products available, so there were no duplicates in the archive for this particular area of interest. Then we can start loading these data sets. In this case, we show you how you can stream data without actually having to download them. So NISAR data are stored in a way that you can stream them from the archive like you would do in an ArcGIS platform, where you actually don't download the data sets, but you stream the data set through the internet. And so we can do this using HTTPS approaches. In order to do this, you need to log in, and you need to do this by retrieving what's called an Earth Data Login bearer token. And it is explained here how this works. Essentially, you go to your Earth Data Login page. If you don't know how to get there, you can just Google NASA Earth Data Login and then click on that first link that you find on the web. If you're not logged in, let me log out real quick to simulate that. You would get to a login page. In my case, my credentials are already here, so I would log in. It gets me to my home page. And then here you see a variety of menu items, and one of them is called Create a Token. If I click that, it will create for me a so-called bearer token, which allows me to access and stream data sets directly from the cloud. And so it has the token here. You can either show it. Easiest thing is to just click on the symbol next to it and copy that token into memory. And then in this packet, the notebook, you then copy paste that bearer token into your notebook. And now you're ready to access and stream your data sets. So now we can access these data. So we briefly fetch them and lazy load them. So you put them in memory so that we can work with the data. And then we extract real quick the date information that's associated with these files and can show them here. So we have 5 different dates. they are between November 23rd of 2025 and January 10th of 2026. These are all the dates. So this year, month, day, and then the hour, minute, and second time of the observation time. Then we can extract a layer from this data set. So we're extracting only the horizontal polarized data set. And we get some information about it. So we have extracted a small subset of the data set that has about 3,000 by 3,000 or 4,000 by 4,000 samples. And totally has a file size of about 400 megabytes in this particular case. We can then visualize where this subset that we created is located. So this just spins up a little map, and so the red box here is where the data set is located. So we are in the southern Nepal region in the Hindu Kush Himalaya, in sort of the foothills in front of the Himalayas, just south of the Himalayas. So now we are ready to potentially work with this data set. What you can do now, once you extracted the subset you want, you can load only this subset to your local machine. This is useful because once it's on your local machine, you can access them again. So if you come back to this notebook later, you don't have to reload it. You can just start at this particular cell and load the data from your local storage. And because you already subsetted it, it's a much smaller data volume and much easier to handle. So here we created a folder, and now we are saving the data set to this folder. And once the saving is done, we can close out the file and just work now on our local machine with the subset we've defined. So instead of downloading a huge frame and huge amount of data, what we did now is we accessed the data directly in place. We found the subset that we are interested in, and then only really saved that subset to your local machine, saving you lots of download time and lots of local memory. You see that this takes just a hot second for the data set to save. And once it's saved, you could walk away from this notebook and come back a few days later and then start directly with section 5 and load that data set back into the notebook for your further research analysis. Okay. So now if you want to, and you come back to this section of the notebook later, you can now reload this data set from your local machine, go super fast, and now you can start working with the data set. In this particular notebook, there's some instructional content in there that talks about the different ways how data sets are presented to you. These SAR images often are presented in what's called a decibel scale. The reason why that's done is because SAR data have a very large dynamic range from the very darkest pixel to the very brightest pixel. They're usually orders of magnitude of power difference. And so that's sometimes difficult to visualize in an image in like 256 gray values. So what we often do is we do a transformation to the decibel scale, which performs a logarithmic transformation, which sort of squeezes the dynamic range down and makes it easier to visualize in sort of a grayscale image. This is super useful for visualization. It's not a good way of doing actual math with the data set. The decibel scaling is a nonlinear transformation, and it actually causes a lot of biases in the mathematics. So this part of the notebook shows you how you can transform the data into the dB scale. It shows you a little bit what kinds of values you would expect. So there's a histogram that is being plotted here that shows you for a typical SAR image, what kind of dB values you would expect. They're somewhere between 0 or maybe a value of 1 down to values of -30 dB. So this is the range that you would typically expect. But then it also shows you how you can go back to the power scale. So if you want to do any kind of mathematics, averaging or so of a data set, you should always do that in power scale and not in decibel scale. And so then it again shows you what the statistical distribution is in the power scale and the values that you would expect in power scale. And so lastly, this notebook just shows you how you can then take, in this case, we have 5 repeated images to do a small time series animation. So this creates a little time series animator that you can use to start inspecting your data set. And you can imagine after 1 year of NISAR, you have you get a nice and deep data stack that you can start analyzing over time. So you see here how a small image is being pulled up. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So this is part in Nepal. And there is a little play button that you can click to sort of start looking at the variations in this data set. And one of the first things you notice that there is a lot of stability in the data. SAR is a super repeatable data set. So if you take repeated observations from the same place in the orbit, the images should look identical unless the physical properties of the ground have changed. Say if you have changes in soil moisture, changes in vegetation cover, or if there was a physical change like harvesting a field or an earthquake or any kind of change that happened in the surface. So it's a great tool for change detection. So mostly there's stability. If you look very carefully, the brightness goes down a little bit over time, but we can quantify that a bit more because we can calculate mean values. And so here we do calculate a mean where we average across the AOI for each time step, and we calculate sort of a mean value as a function of time. We can plot that here. And so what you see is that the average radar brightness is decreasing over time in this sequence. And we did the calculations of the mean in the power scale. And in this particular notebook, the calculated mean is then converted also to the dB scale. So you see them in both sort of projections in the dB scale and in the power scale annotated on this plot. But you see the slow degradation of brightness over time. Here in Nepal, this has mostly to do with the drying out of the surface. The soil moisture is decreasing during this phase, which is the dry season in Nepal after the monsoon, and that typically corresponds to a slow lowering of the radar brightness. And then it ends with a little two-panel figure that is being created where you can see side by side the mean value development and the image itself. So this is going to just take a short second to pull up. Here we go. So you see on one side the image itself, on the other side you see the mean value over time, and you can start linking the overall lowering of the brightness in the scene with sort of a change in the average radar brightness value for that particular scene as well. And again, this can be really useful to just get used to a data set, inspect it, understand what is the dynamic of the data set, what kind of signals are in there, and start to think about what may cause the changes that you see in a data set. So this is one of many data recipes that are already made available by the team. And again, going back to the earlier slide, we are very interested in having you contribute to this set of tutorials and expand about beyond this set of tutorials and give us feedback to some of the workflows that are currently available. And with that, I hand it back over to Heini.
ASF is developing a number of tools and services to help users work with NISAR data. And the first resource I'd like to mention is the NISAR Data User Guide. This is intended to be an information clearinghouse where you can find what you need to know to work with the data. There are guidance and tutorials in the website, but it also links out to a lot of existing content from JPL and other trusted sources. It's a living document, so we're frequently updating it with additional content. There are lots of things we'd like to add in as time allows. And we also keep it updated so that as new information, especially about which data is available, is known, we can update those pages with the new information. So let's take a quick tour. There is a brief introduction to the NISAR mission, including the instrumentation. And then an important page is the available NISAR data. This is where we talk about what is currently available, but also present the data release timeline so that you can know what's coming in the future. So we currently have pre-calibration products available, as Franz mentioned at the beginning, but we are We are expecting calibrated data to arrive in the archive starting in July. If you are working with the pre-calibration sample products, it's important to know that there are some known issues with these data sets. And so you may want to reference this page that goes through some of those issues. We expect that most of these will be fixed with the calibrated data release, but for the data that's currently available, this provides important information. We also link to NISAR observation plan resources, including some interactive apps that are really handy if you want to see what's available in your area of interest, either for the pre-calibration data set or if you're looking ahead to see what will be collected over your area of interest. The data products section introduces each one of the products and links to its product specification file. And it also goes over some of the naming conventions and the HDF5 file format in more detail if you're interested in learning more. The Accessing NISAR data section goes over what we've demoed in today's presentation using Vertex, Earth Data Search, the ASF Search Python package, the Earth Access Python package, and then if you want to interact with the data directly in S3, how you can access those data products. The Using NISAR data section has guidance on ArcGIS and QGIS, and there are also a lot of tutorials available, that either step-by-step tutorials that walk you through interactively, and we also have Python cookbooks that are linked here. I'll skip down to the contact information. If you do have questions, you can contact ASF, but if you have questions about NISAR data in particular, we encourage you to post to the Earth Data Forum. This allows you access to a wide range of experts and specialists. So rather than just relying on ASF to answer your question, we can open it up to people at JPL and the NISAR science team. So it broadcasts your question more widely. And it also allows us to have that information available for other people who may have the same question, so they can see the answer already. ASF is also developing Harmony services to work with NISAR data sets. You saw a bit of the first effort in the Earth Data Search demo, but Harmony is Earth Data's data transformation tool. And we have that option now to extract data sets from the GCOV products as cloud optimized geotiffs. And the next thing on the docket is to use spatial subsetting so that you can clip that extracted data set to an area of interest. Next after that, we'll be looking into clipping the full HDF file to a defined extent. So if you're interested in seeing what we're working on now and what's coming up, we do have our tools and services roadmap, and so you can check that out and see what we're working on and what's coming soon. Another great tool is NASA's Worldview, which is a visualization platform. There are hundreds of layers in there from different sensors and data sets across NASA's ecosystem. And we are really excited that we'll have daily NISAR GCOV mosaics available in Worldview. These will be available once calibrated data is released. So we expect going forward from July, we'll have these daily mosaics available, but I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek in the development environment. So here we've loaded 13 days of data, and you can see that we use a RGB decomposition. You can click through the dates to see where acquisitions occurred and kind of what they look like. And you can also zoom in to these different products, and there's actually quite a lot of detail available. The mosaics are posted to about a 15-meter pixel spacing, and most of the GCOV products over land are either 10 or 20 meter. So this is pretty close to the source data. So it allows you to take a look at your area of interest, see if there was an acquisition at the time that you're interested in, and if it captured the event that you want to know about. It also has the option to compare layers, either different layers, different data sets, or different dates from the same data set. I'll set the time slider to December 28th and December 29th. And you can see that this area has overlapping acquisitions. So I can swipe back and forth to compare the two acquisitions. So this is a really powerful visualization tool. It's a great way to see if there's data available for your area of interest that captured an event that you care about. And with that, I'll turn it over to Franz to talk about the Level 3 Science Algorithm Notebooks.
Thank you, Heidi, for handing it over to me one last time. And like in the demo earlier, I'm going to show you some additional notebooks. So now you know what the Jupyter notebooks are. And the NISAR science team has actually developed a number of very nice notebooks that show you how to create level 3 science products from NISAR. NISAR data is useful for a variety of different disciplines. And notebooks are available for a variety of applications in the cryospheric sciences, you see in the screenshot, in the ecosystem sciences, and in the solid earth sciences. There's also some data available for the soil moisture products. So in each of these folders, if you follow this link to the GitLab repository, you find a set of notebooks that you can, similarly to earlier, clone to your local machine and run if you are interested and want to dive deeper into the science algorithms behind NISAR. You can run those similarly to what we've shown you before in the demo earlier. So feel free to play with these following this link and by cloning the repository and playing with these notebooks. An additional service that might be of interest to you is the observational products for end users from remote sensing analysis, or so-called OPERA project, has been or is going to develop level 3 science products from NISAR datasets. Specifically, it will use NISAR datasets to create products such as surface water extent, such as surface displacements. So this is going to be a North America-wide NISAR-based surface displacement product, as well as a vertical land motion product that will also integrate NISAR datasets. So vertical land motion and surface displacements are available on a North America scale, while surface water extent will be available on a global scale derived from NISAR datasets. There's a link to the OPERA website on this webpage. The displacement datasets will be hosted by ASF. The surface water extent dataset will be hosted by different of the NASA DACs. But all these level 3 datasets are freely and openly available to end users for a variety of applications. And so stay tuned for those datasets. Those will be created and come out soon. So here's a little rundown of what the different products are that OPERA is creating overall. So you have the surface water extent on the left. There's a surface disturbance product, basically a change detection product in the second column. Then you have the displacement and the vertical land motion product. And out of all of those, it is these that are left that will be derived also from NISAR. So again, surface water extent, displacement, vertical land motion, as well as an intermediary product, which is a so-called co-registered SLC product, will also be made available through OPERA to a global community. So again, stay tuned for these datasets. They're slated to come later in 2026 for your analysis and your download and research pleasure. So with that, I want to just wrap it up by summarizing a bunch of resources on this last website, on this last PowerPoint slide. You can see all of these links that are available here, anything from data discovery to a variety of tools that are available to all of the further research tools that we talked about throughout this session. So this is a one-page, one-stop shop for all the links that you found throughout this tutorial. I thank you all for your attention, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions.
Thank you very much to Dr. Meyer and to Heidi for those great demonstrations and presentations. Next, I want to summarize the most important points discussed today, and then we will start our question and answer session. So in summary, NISAR data are freely and openly available. L-band data can be accessed through the Alaska Satellite Facility, while S-band data, along with coincident L-band observations, are available through ISRO's Boonity platform. L-band provides near global coverage every 12 days, with an exact repeat of every 12 days, whereas S-band observations are acquired primarily over India and selected science and calibration validation sites outside India. NISAR data are distributed in HDF5 format. Level 2 products are geocoded, allowing them to be readily overlaid with other geospatial datasets. Open source Jupyter notebooks implementing algorithms for the mission's different science disciplines are publicly available. The only global level 3 product generated by NISAR is soil moisture with a spatial resolution of 200 meters. The GCOV product is a level 2 product, and it's the most suited for those that are not so familiar with radar and that are working on ecosystems, looking at things like land cover, biomass, agricultural growth, floods. So these are radiometrically terrain corrected backscatter images in gamma naught. The GUNW product is the most suited for those that don't have much experience with INSAR. Again, that's a geocoded product that contains both the wrapped and the unwrapped interferogram, which is generated with pairs of images from every 12 days. And finally, NISAR data can be downloaded for local analysis or accessed and processed in the cloud, depending on your workflow. Looking ahead to next week's session 3, which is focused on monitoring earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides with NISAR's INSAR capability. Participants will be able to identify the NISAR INSAR data products and their characteristics, recognize the uses of the NISAR INSAR data products and their uses and limitations, and apply INSAR data to assess ground surface displacement due to earthquakes and landslides. Homework and certificates. There is one homework assignment associated with this training. It opens on July 16th and the due date is August 6th. You can access the homework through the training webpage. A certificate of completion will be awarded to those participants that attend all 3 live webinars and complete the homework assignment by the deadline. You will receive a certificate via email approximately 2 months after completion of the course. And of course, for those of you that have any questions about the material that was presented today, please feel free to contact Dr. Franz Meyer or Heidi Christensen through their emails listed here. So we reached the end of today's session, and we will now be starting the question and answer session. Great. Thank you so much to our guest speakers today. Wonderful, wonderful presentations from Dr. Meyer, Heidi Christensen, and Apumama Sharma. And of course, thank you to all participants for all of your questions and so much enthusiasm for this amazing mission. So what we've been doing has been gathering your questions into a document that you see now on your screen. And we will start answering your questions. Our time is a little limited, so we will try to answer as many questions as possible. However, the questions that we do not have time to answer, we will answer on this Google Doc, which we will post on the webpage, on the training webpage. So let's get started then with the first question here, which is question number 1. Does NASA or ASF plan to provide cloud-ready NISAR products or APIs that facilitate large-scale machine learning? workflows or platforms such as Google Earth Engine, Open Data Cube, or cloud computing environments. So go ahead, Dr. Meyer or Heidi.
Yeah, so as it says here, so the data products available through ASF, they are stored on the cloud, specifically on the Amazon Web Services cloud, and they are stored in a cloud-optimized HDF5 format. Actually, the NISAR project led by JPL has worked extensively on making sure that the HDF5 data format is cloud ready, so that folks that want to access data sets in place and stream data directly from the bucket can do so. It is, if you are a user of Google Earth Engine, I would inquire with the GEE team directly to see what their plans are for adding NISAR datasets. I am quite sure that they're interested in also making NISAR datasets available through GEE, but I can't speak for Google in this case. But please direct your questions to the team. But I would expect that there will be some availability also through that platform, especially if the community requests it. There are some limited cloud computing environments available. Open Science Lab is one of those. There's also resources around NASA that have made offer cloud computing environments. And NASA has a group, what is it called? Heidi, help me. That is sort of designed to teach you how to access data sets in the cloud. So I think I showed those on one of the slides, so you can go back to that slide to find it. And there's the NISAR Data User Guide is always a good place to go back to. This is, as Heidi said, a living document that will list resources as they become available. So just navigate back to that page over time for sort of a one-stop shop with links and information available.
Great. Thank you very much, Franz. And just to add to that, the component of the question related to Google Earth Engine, right now, what you can do is upload your data onto Google Earth Engine and work with that platform that way. Okay, the second question, number 2. Is there an exact data available for NISAR RSLC?
Yeah. Yes. So wasn't quite sure what the question was referring to here, but the RSLCs are an official product that NISAR is releasing. So once the global data release will occur, it will include also the RSLC products for every acquisition that is being made. So it's one of the official products supported by NISAR and will be available with the full data release. And then if you are referring to the date annotation, so every product will have its acquisition date and time annotated both in the file name, very long file name, and in the metadata information.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to question number 3 then. Will we get the whole raw data set or pre-processed ones that we can clip to save RAM and storage for low-end laptops?
Yes, go ahead, Heidi.
So there are quite a range of products available. You can, so there are not currently the level 0B products. They weren't included in the February release, but they will be included with the July release or the forward processing. But you have the choice. If you want the raw data, you can access that, or you can choose one of the higher level products, whatever best suits your workflow.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. Question number 4, are there recommended pre-processing pipelines for combining NISAR SAR products with optical data sets such as Sentinel-2 or Landsat before applying machine learning models for glacier monitoring?
I'm not sure if I read the question all the way to the end, but yes. So the nice thing is NISAR provides fully radiometrically terrain corrected data products. So if you're interested in looking at amplitude change, The data sets are pretty ready to use alongside Landsat. They're fully geocoded, but you may want to make sure that they are sampled the same way. So you may have to resample one of them to match the sampling of the other. And there is a valid pixel mask and a calibration mask available for each NISAR product that tell you which pixels are to be trusted and which ones you may want to mask out. But then if you're looking for just looking at melt processes on glaciers, you should be ready to use them jointly.
Okay, question number 5 then. I'm working in the archaeological field and I'm studying GIS and its usages to apply them in archaeology. How can NISAR data and its tools benefit this field in the sense of discovering and identifying lost structures that sometimes can be hard to identify because they're underground?
Yeah, L-band is a known source for doing sort of satellite archaeology. L-band does have some ability to penetrate into vegetations and also into surfaces. How far and deep you can penetrate will depend, though, strongly on the surface itself, what kind of soils or rock structures you have, and what the soil moisture is. High penetration you get in places like sandy deserts. The Sahara is a really good place, and there have been some past studies using L-band to do archaeology in the Sahara. And there's also been some work on looking like the large ice sheets, and especially in places where you have deeper snow layers, where people have looked for, downed aircraft, or, installations that over time were buried in snow. So there's some literature that you can look through, and some opportunities that L-band data will offer.
Great. Question number 6. Is the GCOV product radiometrically corrected for topography? And if so, which algorithm and DEM is used for this correction?
Yes, the GCOV covariance products are RTC products. I've added a link to the product specification document for details. It uses essentially the Copernicus 30-meter DEM with some modifications for the RTC.
Super. Thank you, Heidi. Next question, number 7. Can we have more information on when forward processed data will be available? Is it in 1 week, 2 weeks, July 31st?
Yeah, so there is no firm announced date, as far as I know, and Erica, you can chime in here too. But we know that data will be flowing soon, and once the data are becoming available, we will make sure that the community will know that data are rolling. I don't know if Erica, if you have any additional info.
No additional information other than I think it will more likely be toward the second half of July, sometime in the second half of July. Okay, the next question, number 8, for NISAR L-band dual polarization products, how does the mission account for ionospheric Faraday rotation? Will the standard products include any correction, quality flag, metadata, such as estimated Faraday rotation angle? And what best practices would you recommend for users analyzing two polarizations that may be affected by FR-induced channel mixing?
Yeah, there's some ionospheric information annotated in the metadata. Maybe Eric can help out with that too. I'm not sure if it's Faraday rotation or TEC in this particular case. But as most data are acquired in dual pole, there isn't an easy way of correcting for Faraday rotation. There are some quad pole data available, but those currently are also not operationally corrected, partly because the acquisition happens at 6 a.m., 6 p.m. And the Faraday rotation at these times is going to be comparably low. So no current operational correction. Most likely low Faraday rotation in most places around the globe because of the acquisition time and geometry.
Great. And we do have Dr. Eric Fielding online in case, Eric, if you'd like to chime in. Okay. So just FYI for everyone here, the third session will be focused on INSAR, and there will be a discussion on ionospheric corrections. Okay, question number 9. How should uncertainty and latency in NISAR urgent response products be incorporated into disaster response decisions, especially when rapid action is required, but the data may not be yet fully refined?
So we do have an urgent response section that goes through the latency and kind of what the trade-offs in terms of processing for those urgent response products. And so it would really depend on the particular application, whether that is a good trade-off.
Okay, great. Thank you, Heidi. And then the next question, number 10, how can the multi-algorithm NISAR soil moisture data, along with aggregated backscatter and ancillary layers, be integrated into GIS and predictive models to support resilient infrastructure and climate responsive land use strategies in urban planning?
Yeah, this is a very, it sounds like a fairly specific workflow. As demonstrated, all of these products are supported in GIS, and so how you choose to use them in that environment or your particular workflows will depend on your particular application.
Great, thank you. Next question, number 11, where can I get more details of the NISAR products that were mentioned, like GSLC, GOFF, the GOF, GNW, GCOV, etc.?
So the data user guide has a section that goes through the data products overview, goes through kind of the different levels, and then there is a page for each one of the products that links to the product specification. So that's a great place to start to get a sense of the products that are available and what you might use them for.
Yeah, absolutely. The NISAR data user guide has an excellent description of the different data products. So that's the best place to start. Okay, the next question. Number 12, I cannot find NISAR data for Southeast Asia. When will it be available?
Yeah, same as before. We expect a global release in the second half of July, as Eric has mentioned before, and that will include Southeast Asia. It will cover all land masses plus some adjacent oceans around all the land masses.
Okay, question number 13. What minimum time period or number of NISAR acquisitions would you recommend before attempting a meaningful deformation time series analysis?
Yeah, that is a question. So if whoever asked this, I would recommend going to the third session also, where Eric is going to talk extensively about NISAR INSAR. How many data you need will depend a bit on your application. If it's a large signal, like an earthquake signal, a single interferogram is often enough. If you're looking for very small data signals that compete with like atmospheric noise, you may want to use a certain time series. How many you need is going to depend on how small your signal is relative to the noise. But Eric, I would expect, will be a better source to answer this in the third session.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. The third session will be focused on this, and Eric will be covering all of these things. And these are questions that he'll be addressing. All right. So the next question, number 14, can ASF be used through API call to automate for multiple downloads?
The ASF Search Python package can be used to script workflows, both to search for data and download it. Same thing with the Earth Access Python package. So that's probably your best bet for a programmatic workflow.
Okay, thank you. Number 15, could you recommend a simple workflow for going from NISAR data download to a basic deformation map?
I think I answered this.
I'll just,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I think in session 3,
Yeah.
Eric Fielding will be showing that workflow, but I
Yeah,
see
so
that you've included some additional information here. Go ahead, Franz.
Yeah, and I mean, there are these GAN-W or G-unwrapped interferogram products available that you can scale for large events like earthquakes or stronger volcano displacement. You can scale to displacement, line of sight displacement right away. Time series analysis may be required at times. Eric will talk about this, and there's also a link for some additional materials that we'll share with this document.
Okay, great. Next question, number 16. Can a user download clip NISAR products covered by the bounding box instead of the entire area?
So as Franz demonstrated, there are ways to subset programmatically, but there are currently not tools available for spatial subsetting in Earth Data Search or Vertex. ASF is working on that. That's kind of the next thing on our docket for Harmony services. So you can check out our development roadmap to see the efforts, our development efforts that are planned, currently underway and planned.
Okay, great. Thank you, Heidi. Let's move on to the next question. Let's see. Any news on whether S-band will have any availability within the US?
Yeah, I linked a ArcGIS map here that shows the observation plan for NISAR, and there are some S-band data available also over the US over some calibration sites. I showed it on one slide as sort of on a world map, but if you go to this link that will be in this document, you can explore which sites are covered in S-band and also jointly in SNL band.
Great, thank you. The next question, number 18. Downloading SLC files for interferometry purpose and time series analysis. Each scene is around 7.5 gigabytes. How do we deal with these big size images?
Yeah, as I think we showed some samples in sample notebooks, how you can subset in place and download data, smaller subsets of data sets. Again, also because of to avoid you having to process the interferograms yourself, there are interferometric data products that NISAR delivers operationally. So you don't have to compute them yourself, at least not all of them, and they're also smaller in size. And there is a likelihood that the community over time will develop services that you can utilize to help you out with handling these large data volumes.
Okay, great. Next question. The question number 19. Will the acquisition grids be updated to include the missing grids in the future? And if so, will it also be available from June 2026? Or the providers will only include some specific dates?
So I'm assuming this refers to the initial release not having global coverage. NISAR does provide global coverage of all land masses up to what is the northern latitudes. There's a hole in the Arctic at I can't remember what the cutoff latitude is, but for the rest of it, it's global coverage every 12 days in ascending and descending. So all of these will become available starting with the release date coming soon. Then there is going to be a reprocessing campaign where some of the past data sets will also be reprocessed and made available since global acquisition has started. So you should be able to access most of these data sets on a global scale.
Absolutely. All right. The next question, number 20. What opportunities exist within the NISAR community for contributing to collaborative projects, data-driven publications, or applied case studies, specifically in urban resilience and infrastructure systems?
Yeah, so there's, if you're familiar with sort of the NASA solicitation, there's sort of an omnibus solicitation that comes out every year that's called ROSES. So just look for solicitations there. Many of them will mention NISAR. There might be some that are specific to NISAR, but many of the other ones will mention NISAR in the call. If you know somebody that works with NISAR already, feel free to reach out. There's a new selection of NISAR applications and a NISAR DART team, which used to be called the science team. And so who's on the science team will become publicly available. feel free to reach out to them and see if they're interested in collaborating. And maybe lastly,
Okay, great.
we are hoping for open code. So we mentioned a few times you can contribute workflows. All of the workflows that we do know that the community is developing, we will share with you through the NISAR Data Users Guide. So you can contribute as a member of an open science community all the time.
Great. Okay. The next question, are the data compatible with Panoply?
Yes, NISAR data can be used in Panoply. There's a guidance document. It was developed for working with the original NISAR sample data, but it applies to newer NISAR products as well. So if you're interested, you can refer to that documentation.
Great. How about, okay, let's move on to question number 22. Will the NISAR SR data acquired over calibration sites in the US also be made available through Bunity?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes. All NISAR S-band data will be available through Bunity, also those over the US.
Okay, wonderful. So how about we take a couple of more questions? I know we're at time, but we have had so many amazing questions. So how about 3 more? The next question, number 22, sorry, 23. Do you know if it's possible to open the NISAR data in Snap?
Yes, I say here Snap supports, but I think the better answer is will support NISAR. So you can already open Snap data as an HDF5 file, a generic HDF5 file in Snap, but it will have specific NISAR support, I think, coming, as far as I know, with Snap version 14.
Okay, great. The next question, what is the number 24? What is the difference between ASF and Earth access when pulling data programmatically?
The ASF search package, it's similar to using Vertex versus Earth Data Search in that ASF search is really optimized for finding data that ASF hosts. So there are a lot more parameters that are specific to the SAR data sets. And so it may be easier to find what you're looking for or hone in on what you're looking for using ASF search, but it really just depends on user preference. You can find data using either package, and it's just what you prefer.
Okay, wonderful. How about question number 25? Is there an ETA for the GDAL HDF5 driver that JPL is developing?
Yeah, that'd be a question maybe for Marco. Maybe you can take that back to the team. I am not aware of a specific ETA, but maybe the JPL team is.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll update that answer here in the document, but we do have to consult with that team to see what is the intended development timeline. All right. So how about something? Let's just skip question number 26. How about something more focused on the data itself and data access? So let's just go to question 28. Can we work on these data sets in QGIS as well?
Yes, and again, refer to the video or our documentation. You just need to treat it currently. You just need to treat the data set as if it's a netcdf file, and as long as you do that, then you can access the data sets and use them in QGIS.
All right, great. So let's go with three more questions. Okay, I promise, just 3 more. Okay, so how about number 29? If we would like to process the data in slant range geometry, how can we do it?
Yeah, so I think we pointed at some resources. ICE3 is a resource. That's the software package that is also behind the operational NISAR processing. There's some courses that I linked earlier on how to use ICE3. Snap is a software package that will support processing data in slant range geometry. And very likely, commercial SAR data processing tools such as Gamma and similar tools will also support NISAR and traditional NISAR processing from the slant range geometry.
Okay, great. Okay, the next question, number 30, what is frequency A and frequency B?
Yeah, we can tag team this. So NISAR transmits two different frequencies, mostly to facilitate ionospheric correction. The main imaging band is frequency A. So if you hear of a 20 megahertz data set or 40 megahertz data set, those are the bandwidths of the frequency A transmission. So that's on one side of the spectrum that NISAR supports. Additionally, there's a signal transmitted on the other side of the spectrum using then the frequency diversity to correct for ionospheric delay in the operationally processed INSAR data. Frequency B is a narrow bandwidth, so a lower spatial resolution, but still provides you a really nice image. And so both of those are available for you to analyze. So two products, slightly different center frequency and slightly different resolution that you can leverage.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a great explanation. All right, so how about question number 34? This is the last one. Is there documentation on how to use the Earth Access Python package? And can we use it to search for available images in a specific area and time and download only? For example, GCOV at frequency A.
So you can refer to the Earth Access section of the NISAR Data User Guide, which goes through the capabilities there. I'm not sure if you can extract specific variables. I think so, but I'm not certain.
Okay, yeah, we will look into this and update this document. So with that, I thank everyone for their patience. I know we're over time. First of all, I do want to thank our experts today, our invited experts, Dr. Franz Meyer, Heidi Christensen, as well as our colleague from ISRO, Dr. Sharma, and of course, the ARSET team who's been amazing in putting all of this together, and to all of you participants for your great interest and enthusiasm and amazing questions related to NISAR today. So please stay tuned. There's one more amazing session, and that'll be next Thursday. It will be focused on INSAR, and my colleague, Dr. Eric Fielding, will be the invited expert for that session. So see you in a week. Have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned. Bye-bye.